In spite of rising economic growth over the last decade, India is still a country grappling with devastating poverty, accounting for a third of the world's poor, its growth leaving hundreds of millions of its citizens behind in the margins of society. The complex challenges faced by India require bold solutions. The American India Foundation is working on the front lines of social and economic change across India, developing innovative solutions to persistent challenges and creating countless opportunities for India's poor to live successful, productive lives.
The American India Foundation has created countless opportunities for India's poor to live successful, productive lives. By engaging with a broad range of stakeholders to develop innovative, sustainable solutions, AIF has evolved into a movement that is working to transform India into a more open, equitable, and vibrant society. This work is only possible because of the thousands of people who've joined the AIF movement. So I'm proud to support AIF's William J. Clinton Fellowship for Service in India.
Welcome to Chai with Manju. We have a very special guest with us today. He is the CEO of American Indian Foundation, which is a non-profit that has raised over $129 million and impacted over 4.6 million lives in India. Let us meet Nishant Pandey. Nishant, welcome.
Thank you, Manju. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the show and coming to Boston.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So now you were born in Lucknow, educated in London, then you led the Oxfam charity, then you were part of AIF, and then you started to lead or became a leader of AIF in October of 2017. So what brought you to AIF?
I used to, I've been in this sector for about 20 years. I'm an economist by training. So like most economists, I started off my career with banking.
Right.
And then as luck would have it, I moved to Oxfam, which is a global charity. I joined Oxfam in India, but then moved to the head office, which is in Oxford, UK.
Right.
And I was the country director for Oxfam based out of Jerusalem. This is for Israel and Palestine. And that's when AIF approached me. They were looking for someone to lead their India program. I didn't know much about AIF at that point of time, but I was impressed with two things. One is the longevity of AIF programs. The fact that AIF has managed to run these programs for so many years is quite impressive. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, you've been doing the same things for so many years. As a development professional, I think it's a very good thing that we've been focusing on the same things for so many years. There is absolutely no reason for us to change the focus until the problems that we are trying to solve go away. So I was very impressed with that. The other thing I was very impressed with is the focus. I think the biggest asset of AIF is the community, is the community of supporters that we have in the US. It's a very diffused organization. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone. It's a collective platform. And if you have an organization like that, to be able to maintain focus on the three areas that we work on, which is health, education, and livelihoods, is very impressive. So that was the kind of two biggest reasons that helped me make a decision to join AIF.
Talking of some of the important programs, education is an important pillar. The LAMP program, which is the Learning and Migration program, and the Digital Equalizer, which provides computers to schools and colleges, right? So tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you for this question. As I said, building human capital is at the core of our approach to development, and education, of course, is a very important part of that. Unfortunately, there are 1 million state schools in India, government-run schools in India, where about 250 million children go. But the quality of education in these schools is very poor. So what we do in our program is to focus on government schools and work with teachers and headmasters and the government at the state level to improve the quality of teaching and learning in these schools.
Okay.
Eventually with the purpose of improving the learning outcome for kids, so that they are not just responsible citizens, but also they can contribute productively to the economy. So the Digital Equalizer program, which we have been running now for almost 14-15 years, has reached out to close to 3 million children so far. This year we are working in 12,500 state schools across 11 states.
Okay.
LAMP is a very fascinating program, and I say this because we are one of the very few organizations that are actually working on education of children coming from migrant communities.
Right.
These are communities, almost 70 to 100 million people in India who are forced to migrate for 6 to 7 months a year in search of livelihoods. This is called distress seasonal migration. And in this migration, they take their children with them. So their education gets disrupted. So although these children are enrolled in these schools, they don't go to the schools, and they, most of them end up working as child workers on the work sites that their parents work on. So salt pans, brick kilns, construction sites, etc. What we do through LAMP is to retain these kids in the villages so that their education can continue.
Another favorite of mine as a doctor, of course, is your public health program, which is the Mansi Maternal and Newborn Survival Initiatives. Of course, our local doctor pediatrician, well-known pediatrician, Dr. Sunita Pereira has been involved with us, and she has actually introduced many of us to that program. Now, tell us about that as well. I think it started in Jharkhand, where it's the second highest mortality, right?
Right.
Okay.
No, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Sunita Pereira for being a very strong guide and supporter and champion of Mansi.
Absolutely.
Mansi also happens to be my favorite program for many reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons is that India contributes 22% of the global burden of newborn deaths in the world. More than 700,000 babies die within the first 28 days of birth in India. So there is no way the world can achieve Sustainable Development Goal 3, which is on health and well-being, if India does not perform. So Mansi is our contribution to India's performance on SDG 3. The other reason why it's my favorite program is because, again, by definition, we are operating Mansi in one of the in the most remote and rural parts of India, mostly with tribal communities, because that's where the mortality rates are much higher than the national average. So we started this program in 2010 in 167 villages of Jharkhand as an intense pilot for 5 years. After 5 years, we carried out an external evaluation. In these 5 years, Mansi had managed to reduce newborn mortality by 46%.
So AIF has done such wonderful work. You've also partnered, I heard, with 310 NGOs in India, and not surprisingly, you've received 4 stars from Charity Navigator. And how does that make you feel?
Oh, I feel very good, very proud, and Charity Navigator is the largest independent rating agency for non-profits in the US. And they look at financial efficiencies. They also look at governance, quality of governance, and transparency and openness. And 4 star is the maximum that you can get from them. So of course I feel very proud that I'm leading an organization that has received the highest rating from Charity Navigator. You also talked about working with 310 partners. I think that's an important point. Again, a core approach of AIF is to work with others, is to mobilize multi-stakeholder initiatives where we bring different strengths and capacities of different types of actors, be it the government, be it corporates, be it other NGOs, and work together to solve some of these problems.
Well, we have a very strong Boston chapter, as you know, a lot of volunteers, a lot of leaders. We'll be talking to some of them as well.
Right.
But as the relatively new CEO now, what is your mission in the next few years?
So I think having led the program on the ground, I believe AIF and all its programs at a very interesting inflection point. When AIF was set up, the core philosophy, as I said, was collective philanthropy and venture philanthropy.
Okay.
And of the 7 programs that we have, there are some programs which I believe have matured, and they can actually be run as independent organizations on their own, and they can sustain themselves on their own. And there are some programs like Mansi which we want to significantly scale up over the next 5 years.
Okay.
So my vision for the organization is to is in the next 5 years is to reach a level where we have successfully created 2 new organizations who will scale up the program on their own, and to take Mansi to a level where it becomes a mature program, and hopefully to become an independent organization itself.
That sounds wonderful, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It is our pleasure today to welcome 2 important leaders of AIF from our own Boston community. Venkat Srinivasan, well-known serial entrepreneur, managing director of InnerSpark Ventures, founder of Rage Frameworks. He is also known for his love for education and health and has founded English Helper and Know Your Meds. He is the vice chair of board of directors of AIF, and he is also very supportive philanthropist in our community. We're a very quiet one. So let's welcome Venkat. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about why AIF.
When we started thinking about giving back, we wanted to be involved in an organization where we could achieve multiple purposes. One was that our love for India is its diversity, and so we wanted an organization that was both secular and multi-purpose, because there's so many needs in India. And the second, I think, important reason was that I, being an entrepreneur, I love the idea of making all organizations become sustainable. Right? So I like the idea of venture philanthropy, and the notion that we would fund an organization and let it eventually take on its own life. I think was quite appealing. Right? And so those were the 2, and the people involved are amazing. There's very similar mindset, very similar approach, and we all believe in this secular, multi-cause, and a venture-oriented approach.
Okay. Are there any projects in AIF that's close to your heart?
I have to start with. I had the privilege of about 5 or 6 years ago. I had the privilege of looking at every project in depth. Okay, so I spent a good 2-3 months. It was at a point in time where I had some time, and the organization needed it at that time. We were really looking at how do we strategically move these projects forward. So I looked at every project, and I concluded, and we also were looking at, out of that exercise, we were looking at other projects that we should be transitioning off of, other projects we should scale up. What should we do with our portfolio of projects? Right? It was part of a bigger agenda to set a strategy for the organization, and it was my first project when I became vice chair. And the thing I came away with was every one of our projects is fantastic. Okay? And I think the important thing about AIF, and I'll come to which one is closer to my heart in a minute, but I think the interesting thing about AIF is that it's almost like Star Trek. No, we tread where no man
Has gone before.
has gone before.
I like that.
So
Okay.
we have taken on projects that others have not yet paid attention to, and usually after we have shown a spotlight on it, then many others have come after us, right? And therefore, the notion of venture philanthropy, that at some point,
Right.
either we need to stay with it and scale up, or we need to give it to others. Right? So today I would say that out of all the programs, I would say ABLE works with differentially abled people,
Right.
and Mansi, which saves lives.
Absolutely.
Certainly, so those are two of my favorite projects. But at the basic level, they're all very good. They're all just different types of projects.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then the third one that I think has taken on an interesting new dimension, especially in today's context, political and otherwise, is the fellowship. And that, at the board level, we've spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that we, at one level, above all programs, we're really building a strong bridge between India and the US.
This is the Clinton
The
Fellowship.
Clinton
right?
Fellowship.
Right.
So that's it. So that's 3 out of 5 programs. So they're all good. Math is good.
Okay. And I know that you're going to be doing a lot of work with AIF. What would you like your legacy to be?
So when I first joined AIF, which was Raj and Nalini got us involved. And that was really, the focus at that time was to build the New England chapter. And with their leadership, we did. We now have a robust chapter.
Absolutely.
That was the early sort of phase 1.
Right.
Phase 2 was when I was nominated to the board. And that point, there was an intense level of activity in organization building. So I think as vice chair, when I look back at the 4, 5, 6, 7 years, the hardest thing that a nonprofit goes through is the early years of a nonprofit is great because there's lots of sweat and blood and the
Energy.
founders and energy, because they're generally the ones that are passionate about the cause, generally single purpose, single cause organizations. But over time, that's not a sustainable model. You need to, the organization has to scale, you have to transition to full-time management, full-time, can't run the organization with volunteers. So we made a conscious choice some 7, 8 years ago to do that. And that process, I think, has been, if I look back, that was phase 2. Not I alone, but many of us, but certainly some of us who are maybe in the board leadership, were very consumed with organization building. And we tried many things. I think we built a pretty strong organization. I think if I think about legacy, right, there's a phase 3. and the phase 3 is now is really about the organization is 15 years old. It has raised a lot of money. It has also had a lot of impact. And the question in front of us now is, where should AIF be in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Now, what should it, how do we ensure that it is still relevant? How do we ensure that it is, purpose is really being met? We said we are a venture philanthropy, right? So I would expect that the next 3 to 5 years, our focus, or my focus, as part of the board leadership, would be to really operationalize the venture philanthropy model. Are we actually exiting some programs for the right reasons? Not that the programs will ever get abandoned, but should we let them become their own organizations? Some of our earliest grantees, by the way, are today doing really well. Pratham is a good example. And I think there are others like that. We can create, any one of our programs can stand on its own feet. And that's, I think, an important legacy. So I'm hoping that the next 4 or 5 years is really going to the next stage of that venture philanthropy model.
That sounds wonderful. We wish you all the best.
Yes,
Thank you
very much.
And now it's an honor for us to meet Raj Sharma, head of prestigious Sharma Group, who's been named as the top financial advisors in United States by Forbes, Financial Times, and of course, Barron's has listed him as the top 100 financial advisors for 14 consecutive years. And he's also the reason that many of us in New England are so passionate about AIF. Let's meet Raj Sharma. Welcome.
Thank you, Manju, for having me.
Thank you. So why AIF? I'm going to ask you the same question.
I like AIF for several reasons. Number one, it's secular. And in a country like India, with so many different religions and practices, being secular to me is great. The other thing I like about AIF, it's like managing a portfolio.
Right.
Your portfolios are never static. It changes. So AIF is always looking at what are the causes where we can have the biggest impact. And they try to get out of areas where they feel that somebody else can have a bigger impact. So the shifting of the portfolio and the focus is an important thing for me.
I'm learning 2 new words today: venture philanthropy and managing a portfolio for AIF. That's so exciting.
Exactly.
Now,
And as India changes, 10 years ago, most of India did not have access to the internet and digital education. So AIF was a pioneer in that field. And today, it's much more available. Wi-Fi, the computers, the classroom. So we are gradually shifting focus to areas where the need is the greatest, like Mansi, for children and women.
And Mansi is, of course, a big focus at the upcoming gala, right?
That's correct.
You and your beautiful wife Nalini are the gala chairs.
And looking forward to it.
There's a lot of buzz around it. So tell us, people who want to be involved, how they can get involved, and what is going to focus on apart from
Absolutely.
Mansi.
First of all, I would say, come to the gala in your finest attire. I promise you a great time. You'll feel good about it. And please get your checkbook.
Yes.
Or better yet, your
Yes.
credit card.
March 23rd, Saturday.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Right.
Mansi, I was in India last year with Nalini and Venkat, and we went to many of the remote villages in India. And it's amazing that, some programs are about teaching a kid to get on the internet and, get digitally equipped. Mansi is about saving lives. And it is not acceptable today that so many infants die in India right at childbirth.
Right.
And the rate in India is 5 times that of the United States. And India has some of the greatest medical talent in the
Yes.
world, including you, Manju, right here. And I really feel that we got to use the expertise in the United States combined with the medical community in India to promote these public health practices, saving the child, but also saving the mother. And I don't think it's acceptable. And I really feel we need to make a big headway in that area. And I think this is a program with tremendous promise for AIF. And we feel that, the impact is great, the resources are available, and we really want to make a big push. It's not just an incremental drive, but making a big national push along with other organizations.
Absolutely. It's very exciting. And we're all looking forward to coming to the event.
Absolutely.
So all the best.
You'll have a terrific time,
Absolutely.
I promise you.
Every year we do, and this year is extra special.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank you so
for
much.
highlighting AIF and all the good
Thank
work
you.
it's doing, and
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.